Hello and welcome to Thursdays Live with Chugh. My name is Neha Mahajan, Business Development and Outreach Manager at Chugh LLP Attorneys and CPAs. It's Thursday, September 8th, 2022. It's 2 o'clock Eastern Time, 11 o'clock Pacific Time, which brings us all together for Thursdays Live with Chugh. And you're watching us live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Today, we will be talking about how to start a company while being on a visa in the United States of America. America is the land of dreams. When we land here, when people come here, they want to achieve that dream really fast. But in doing that, and while you're hustling, you don't want to jeopardize your status. You don't want to jeopardize your visa, right? So how do you go about it? How can you start a company while you're still on a visa in United States of America? Let's say you are on a student visa. You have a bold idea. You have the finances in place. What next? Say you're on an H-1b visa and you're stuck in the green card backlog, and is it even legal to hustle on the side? We will answer all of these questions today live on this Thursdays Live with Chugh. Joining me from our Edison office is partner and attorney, Ms. Diya Mathews. Hi there, Diya. Welcome.
Hey, Neha. Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, after a long time, Diya.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we dive into today's discussion, really, there's an update. There's an important update for those who have been waiting for their green cards and who've been waiting for the visa bulletin month after month with bated breath. We've seen a lot of positive activity since October 2020. And finally, October 2022 is the month that dates are going to retrogress. What does it mean for Indian-born nationals? What does it mean for you? We're going to discuss all about it. Diya, I want you to, really go into a little bit of detail and explain what's happening, because dates are, if I'm not wrong, retrogressing for about 974 days, if I'm not wrong. I saw a number somewhere.
Right. Yeah. So the expected has happened. We knew, based on everything that USCIS was telling us for the last few months, we knew that there was a big effort from their end to use up as many visa numbers as possible by the end of the fiscal year, the immigration fiscal year, which ends on September 30th. So ever since these predictions, ever since USCIS started issuing these advisories, there has been prediction that the dates will retrogress after September 30th. And that is exactly what has happened. So the visa bulletin came out yesterday, I believe, and there is a retrogression of about 2 years for EB2, which is expected. EB3, I think, has moved forward a little bit. So not unsurprising because of the demand for EB2 in the last, couple of years, right? So based on that, this is really not surprising, but, of course, it's disappointing, right? So the good thing is we still have this window to work with. By the end of September, we can still file cases using the cutoff dates published in the September visa bulletin. But, by October 1st, we are going to see retrogression for EB2.
Right. We've been seeing a lot of slack, like USCIS has gotten a lot of slack lately. There are still a lot of pending cases. A lot of people who applied in even October of 2020 are still, as of today, waiting for their green cards. They might have gotten their EADs and APs, but not the real green card in hand, right? So what happens in that case?
Yeah, I think most of them, I think we still have about 3 weeks left. So my guess is that USCIS has probably set aside some numbers for the cases which are already in the queue. That is my hope. We'll see. Because many of the clients have already received RFEs for medical reports, which usually happens at the final stage. And it means that a USCIS office has actually picked up your case and is adjudicating it. So if you get an RFE for medicals, that's a very good sign. And I think probably my assumption is that they've already set aside a visa number for that. So it's just a matter of actually processing the medical report where needed and then issuing the green card. But for others, we don't know. We'll have to see. But I don't think even the agency, even USCIS, wants to be stuck with these files. I think they will try to dispose of them by the end of the month.
Well, let's just be hopeful, because these people, I was actually speaking to one of them this morning, and they were like, hey, Neha, My case has been in pending status since October of 2020. I still don't have my green card. I just don't know what to do because, there's a lot at stake. And these people have
Yeah.
waited a good number of years for this to happen. So it's not fair, USCIS, really.
I know there's so much heartache. I mean, we've seen so many clients go through all the hoops, do the EB3 downgrade and then, do the premium processing upgrade just so that the case is approved. Then they go, interfile for the EB2, and then now, when the, when there's light at the end of the tunnel, but then suddenly it's like, it's that the tunnel is being closed off. Right. So, unfortunate, but we'll see. I think the majority of the cases will be approved. But let's await further guidance from USCIS.
All right. Thank you for that, Diya. And we will talk about this in detail in another time. But today's topic, how to start a business while you're on a visa in the United States of America. So Diya, about the topic, my first question is, can anyone in the United States of America who's on a visa, can they open a business?
Can they open a business in the sense that they can set up an entity? Yes. They can definitely incorporate an entity. You don't have to be a US citizen or resident or any of those things to actually incorporate an entity in the US. So it's like investing in shares, right? So you can set up a company, you can, allocate shares to yourself, just as you would purchase shares in, another company or on the exchange. Just like that, you can do that.
Okay. So, I just want to let the audience know we're live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So if you have any questions for us, we'll be happy to answer them. Just leave them on the comment section and we'll pick them up. And if you're watching us as a recorded version, send us your questions, info@chugh.com. That's info@chugh.com. Also want to mention a disclaimer. The discussion today is for informational purposes only and does not create an attorney-client relationship. All right. So technically, people can start a business no matter what visa they're on, right? What is the one thing that you want people to know? Those who are looking to open the business while on the visa, what is that one thing you want them to know?
Well, I think the key distinction is this: opening a business and then operating the business are two different things, right? So in terms of setting up the entity, having yourself as the owner of the company, no issue with that, no immigration restrictions there. But when you start operating the entity, right, actually running the business, taking decisions, that's when you need to be mindful of immigration restrictions. You need to be mindful of the visa status that you are in and act accordingly.
All right. And, I see a lot of people, those who are on student visa, they don't want to be waiting for their H-1b to come about and then be stuck in green card backlog and all of that processes, right? Can someone on OPT, can they open up a business and operate and make profit out of it?
The OPT, yes, technically they could, but keep in mind that the OPT is actually for, it's an offshoot of you're still in student status when you're using the OPT, right? So you have the EAD card, and EADs generally are, meant to authorize. I mean, they technically do authorize you for self-employment to have your own company and, run it. And people used to do that in the past. But now I think the US government has become a little more strict in terms of, the purpose of the OPT and, the whole F1 visa program, right? Because there's been so much misuse. Right. So you could have your own entity set up, like you could, using your OPT, you could have your own company, and you could, I guess, technically be employed by the entity that you have set up. Right. But the question is, are you using the OPT for the purpose that it is, meant to be, which is to get practical training in the field that you studied, right? So you somehow need to make sure that this OPT is being used for the purpose that it's meant to serve, which is to give
that's the technical part of it. Yeah. And that's the technical part. And coming to H-1Bs, H-1B visas are employer specific, which means that an H-1B visa holder can only engage in employment activities with their petitioning employer. Yeah. And because there is an employer-employee relationship between the H-1B visa holder and the petitioning employer, entrepreneurship can be really complicated when it comes to H-1B workers. What kind of options really do exist for H-1B visa holders in this case?
Are you talking about specifically opening a visa, opening a business?
Yes.
Yes. So again, going back, to the initial point, right? That you can set up a company, you can set up an LLC, and I think somebody was asking, can you open an Escort? So we'll get to that.
Right.
But generally, to set up an LLC or a C Corp or any of those kind of entities, your immigration status is not going to be an impediment. It's just you're just really incorporating an entity, and so an H-1B holder can do that. So I guess hypothetically, you could have a situation where an H-1B visa holder is working for the petitioner, for the petitioning employer, but they incorporate a business, on the side, and they have, and that business, they cannot technically run that business because they don't have the work authorization to run that business. Mm-hmm. So the operations or the running of the business would have to be done by somebody else.
All right. So they'll have to kind of like create a board or something?
Yes, they could, have a board. They could have employees, who run the business. They could have officers and directors, and you could well have a business which is run by somebody else and is owned by you.
Okay, all right, but you can't make profit out of that. You can't earn out of that business, isn't that?
You can have profits because you'll be, you'll be getting the profits based on your K1 or your dividends from that company, right? Not as a salary. So your salary, your W-2 should only come from your H-1B sponsor, from your petitioner. But you could derive an income from the business that you own, as long as you're not doing activities which constitute employment for that business.
All right. I mean, this is complicated, but you've tried, you've really done a good job at explaining it to all of us, because I think tax complications can be nerve-wracking. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to get into a situation with the IRS.
Right. And it's also good to consult a CPA, when you do this. So, every now and then we'll have this client who wants to set up a business. And I tell them, definitely you can own your business, right? Because it's ownership. It's just shares, membership units or shares or, what have you in that business. But, whether you can direct employees and officers or whether you can actually perform services for that company, that would be a no-no.
All right. We do have a question from Neelu Deva, and she's asking, can they open Escort? I'm assuming she's mentioning H-1B visa holders. So can H-1B visa holders open Escort?
An Escort, yeah. So an Escort is basically, usually it is a C Corp or an LLC, which has chosen the S classification, right? So Escort is basically, it's a classification given by the IRS, and that depends on your resident status in the US. So technically, you could have an S Corp because to choose the S election, you have the majority of the owners have to be US residents being a tax term, So as long as you meet the requirements, you meet the tax requirements, you could still own an S Corp. But again, I would defer to a CPA or accountant.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope, Neelu, that answers your question. And if you are watching us and you're wondering what we're talking about how to start a business while you're on a visa in the United States of America. So if you are on a student visa or an H-1B visa holder or any other kind of employment-based visa, and you want to know whether you can hustle on the side and, create an entrepreneurship opportunity for your own self, can you do that? Are there any legal obligations to it? We're discussing all of that. So if you have any questions for us, send them to us in the comment section, wherever you're watching us, whether on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, or email them to us, info@chugh.com. Now, what is the IEP program, Diya, and how can those on visa take advantage of it? Because, and I also want you to go into the GEIR program. I see a lot of universities, advertising the GEIR program. And can you please just go into a little bit of detail there too? I know I'm asking you too many questions.
A little bit of detail. Okay, I was going to ask you how much time do we have, but all right. Okay, no, but these are great topics, and I wish there was more visibility, more understanding of these programs, because we really should be utilizing these programs more. So let's talk about the IEP. I think you asked about the IEP first. So the IEP is the International Entrepreneur Parole Program, and it's been around for a while, but the Trump administration wasn't really, approving or endorsing it. So now with the Biden administration, they had said that they will start processing these cases. So the IEP is a fairly, it's kind of like it's an application for work authorization. And it's I guess you could think of it as a startup visa. It's really for people who have, started up their businesses and who have, there should be some excitement around that startup. Like, I can start a business and say, oh, this is my startup, but you need a little bit more. You need to show that you have an idea, or, this business idea has generated some interest, and there has been some investment from outside. And there's also definitions around, what kind of investment is needed. Like, if it is a venture capital firm, we have to show that's a legit venture capital firm. They should have invested in other startups in the past. There's, threshold requirement as to the amount, and how old your startup, your startup cannot be older than a certain number of years. So if you can show that, and the applicant, the IEP applicant also should have at least, I believe, 10% ownership in the business, in the startup. So we actually, I think when this came about, I think we did a session separately on it. Yeah, so we can probably link to that. But if these requirements are met, then you can apply for the IEP. Now, and the IEP applications are adjudicated by the same USCIS department that adjudicates the EB-5 visas, the EB-5 applications. So they're used to adjudicating these cases, that are based on investments and entrepreneurship. So that's the IEP program. And I think it's a good vehicle for, for graduates, people who've done their masters or PhDs, because they're the ones that, have these new ideas, and who are, actually, they have pretty good startups, pretty exciting startups that they, want to set up. So I think the IEP is a good option for them to explore. The other one that you asked about was the global, I think, the entrepreneur in residence, the GII program. So that a few universities, and in fact, some good reputed universities, my university, University of Michigan, I think also has something like that, where they, have people come and work with the university, to promote entrepreneurship. Now, I think this is probably always around, but now of late, I think some universities are promoting this in a big way. What they're saying is that, we know that if you're a foreign resident or a student and you are here, then the work visa becomes a challenge, because you cannot, just work for anyone, or you cannot do things on your own. So there is a certain provision in immigration law that if you work for an H1, if you have an H-1b that is sponsored by a university, right? You don't go through the lottery, you don't go through the cap for that. Mm-hmm. So a university, a higher education institution can sponsor an H-1b for someone at any point in the year. You don't have to go through the lottery. Now, once you have an H-1b like that, a cap exempt H-1b like that, you could also have in parallel an H-1b to work for a regular employer. Right?
Oh, okay.
So you kind of have, the concurrent, you have two H-1bs concurrently. Right. And that is, so the second H-1b that you have to work for a regular employer, that's only as good as the time that you have the first H-1b for, for the university. Okay. So it's kind of like using the university H-1b as a crutch to get the regular H-1b. Right. And obviously, you should only use it for legitimate purposes. You should only use it, if the university actually has work for you and, you're actually working for the university. But some universities are promoting this, and I always advise my clients to do their due diligence and make sure that, the university is actually doing this. Both the H-1Bs that you hold should be served properly, like the work that you perform under both the H-1Bs, the one for the university and one for the regular employer. Both, you have to abide by the terms of both these H-1Bs, but that's one way to do it.
All right, thank you. That was quite complex. I mean, I think that's why it's so important that if you have an idea, you have the means to make that idea into a business, turn it into a business. This is exactly why you should be talking to an attorney and understanding that there could be various ways out there that could not only help you, but in case there are any shortcomings that you can't envision at the moment, an attorney can help you guide through it. They can help you navigate through your to reach your American dream, so as to say, right? So you actually answered my next question. I was going to ask you about the concurrent H-1b and what it means for those on H-1b, or those who want to open a business on H-1b. So that goes. We will be going ahead and taking some audience questions at the moment.
So actually, before that, Neha, if I may just add, so the concurrent H-1b can be any, you can have a concurrent H-1b, in any situation, pretty much. Right. It doesn't have to be for somebody who necessarily has the university H-1b. Even a regular H-1b holder could have a second concurrent H-1b filing, and a lot of people do that these days.
Right, but I think there's some legality around the number of hours you can work in a week and all of that.
Yeah, so, we ask people to make sure that they only file petitions for, the number of hours that they can reasonably work.
Right.
They sometimes clients ask, can I have 2 full-time H-1Bs? And yeah, I guess the answer is if you think you can actually work 2 full-time jobs, then, there's right. No statutory or legal prohibition to it.
Right, but it'll also depend on the officer adjudicating your case.
Yeah, we've never had that query, actually, to be honest with you. We filed a concurrent H-1Bs for, full-time positions, and we never really encountered that question. So maybe the people do work, 80 or 20 hours a week. Who knows? Right. I'm sure there's a lot of people who do that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we'll be going ahead and taking some audience questions. This first question is, if an H-4 EAD holder sets up a business in the US, can the business sponsor their spouse's H-1B in the future?
The question is, so if an H-1B holder sets up, an H-4 EAD holder sets up a business, can the?
Yeah.
Well, the answer would be yes and no. Yes. So if the business in this case is owned by the H-4 EAD holder, no problems there. H-4 EAD holders can definitely set up their own businesses. So that's not an issue. Now, the question is whether this business can sponsor the H-1B for the owner's spouse, right? That can be done, but you might need to disclose it. So there is a question on the H-1B petition, does the beneficiary have any ownership in the business, right? And in this case, let's say it's not the beneficiary who owns, it's the beneficiary's H-1B beneficiary spouse who owns a stake in the business, or maybe even owns the business 100%. Now, you have to see how you want to, answer that question. If you were to just follow the letter of the law, the disclosure is probably not needed. But if it were me, I would probably disclose it. The second question is, now can you show that there's actually going to be an employer-employee relationship between that entity and the beneficiary, right? Because if you're only using this, this facade of the business, to actually do your own thing, right, for self-employment purposes, then it doesn't, you're going to have a hard time explaining how there is a valid employer-employee relationship, right? On the other hand, if it is not just the spouse who's the owner in the company, but let's say there is other owners, right? And you can show that there is actually going to be others who, will have an employment relationship with the beneficiary, then you might be able to justify that this is a valid H-1B. Okay. But otherwise, I had this case a few years ago where, this H-1B beneficiary, and this was much before, the disclosures were required or even part of the petition. but it was a petition that was a business that was owned by the beneficiary's parents. And USCIS, in the course of a site visit, they found out that the business is actually owned by the H-1b beneficiary's parents. And they said that we are not convinced that, you actually have an employer-employee relationship going on here. It's just you running the business and it's you as a beneficiary. So they actually revoked the petition. So, I would tread very carefully there and get good advice before proceeding.
All right. So thank you for that. There's another question about those on H-4 visa in the United States. Can they work for non-US employers? Suppose there's another country that they got an offer from. Can they work for that employer? Because technically they're a third country national, in the US on the visa.
In the US, yeah. We get that question a lot, especially. So the question is whether they're physically in the US, but they're working for an overseas employer and they don't have work authorization in the US. So that actually would be a violation of, the whole immigration, the regulations, because you don't have work authorization, right? I mean, the fact that you are working for somebody overseas is irrelevant. What is happening is that you are in US territory and you're working. So I would not advise people to do that. A lot of H-4s, wanted to know if this was possible, before they had the whole EAD option. And the answer is clearly a no. It's not, you're not authorized to work for any employer.
Okay. All right. So that clears all the air. That clears the confusion. Now, can H-4 EAD start a business and sponsor their own green card in EB1 category?
EB1 category. So is this like a multinational manager? So EB1 has, few different options under that. So the question is whether they can do a multinational manager petition. Ownership of the beneficiary in the business should not be a bar to doing an EB1 as long as all the other requirements for an EB1 petition are met. I don't think there should be a problem.
All right. This seems like a very interesting question here, Diya. And we just have about 4 minutes left for today's discussion. For an H-1b, H-4 status holder who wants to form an LLC, would opening a business checking account and or applying for an EIN amounts to work?
Opening a business account should not be a problem.
Okay.
Applying for an EIN is also not a problem.
Okay, so that's good. Okay. The other question that I find really interesting is my husband is an H-1b visa holder and I'm on H-4 visa and I'm an artist. Can my husband sell my arts at NFT and on private websites or any websites really? Is that even possible? And keep the earnings, keep the profits.
Yeah, and I don't know why the husband is selling it. Why can't the painter or the artist?
For visa, I think that's why.
Yeah, but buying and selling on eBay or Amazon or any of those, I don't think there should be a problem with that. I think mostly people would do it through an entity. And as long as it's not, if it doesn't cross threshold and become like a regular business, if it's just, a few instances here and there, then that should not be a problem.
All right. So till the time, you're on an H-4 visa, you're trying to sell some of your artwork, but not making like a regular business. It's okay off and on, but not like a regular business.
Yeah. I think there's also advisory saying that you can paint. Like you're not, when let's say you're a painter and you're painting and you're selling, right? It's not like a job, it's not, like having a job which technically somebody else could do. Mm-hmm. So I would say that, that painting should be okay. Now the question, I think a lot of people also do baking, like they do home baking and, they sell. Now that I think is a little more of a gray area because that's actually like a business, you're running it like a business and I would not advise people to do it without valid work authorization.
All right. Okay. And I think we have 1 minute left. So very quickly, can I invest in a business run by an H-4 EAD holder when I am on an H-1B myself?
Whether you can invest. Yes. Investments are fine. Putting in money, buying shares, all of that stuff is good. It's no problem there.
All right, that brings us to the end of our discussion today. Diya Mathews, thank you so much for joining me today and talking in such great details. I hope all of you who've been watching us, our audience, you got some insights on whether you can open a business while on a visa in the US. And the short answer is yes and no. So if you're just trying to watch the tail end of our discussion today, please watch the entire discussion because it's been really, really enthralling, quite. Exciting also. With this, I would like to say goodbye and we'll see you again next week with another topic, another discussion, and hopefully with an attorney or a CPA. If you have any suggestions for us for the kind of topics you would want us to discuss, send us an email, info@chugh.com. If you have any questions, you want a consultation, you want a second opinion, or you just want a legal, an attorney to look at your situation and just need a friendly advice, we'll be happy to help you there. info@chugh.com. We will see you next week at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. See you then.